All right, so let me welcome everyone officially to the second Sully District SSPA meeting. My name is Michael Burton. I am with the Department of Planning and Development. I think I got some feedback. Let me see if I can track it down really quickly. Okay, hopefully we're good. Um, Again, as I said, this is the second meeting. We had our first meeting last week on Wednesday, if I remember correctly. And if you're interested in seeing that meeting, if you were unable to attend, that meeting posting will be on the webpage as well. We did start recording. Michael started recording late in that process, so some of the front matter is missing, but we did catch the discussions for the very first nomination and all of the subsequent nominations, so that information will be there, as well as a PDF of that presentation, just in case you're interested. A lot of that information we will go over tonight, so if you attended that first meeting, great. The first part is probably going to seem familiar to you. While I pull this up, I'd first like to do a couple of things. One, I want to introduce other staff. I'm joined this evening by Leanna O'Donnell and Leah Neubauer, also with the Department of Planning and Development. They're going to help me try to manage the comments that come forth and the hands raised. So I'm grateful for them tonight. And most importantly, we are grateful to have Supervisor Smith of the Sully District with us this evening. Thank you once again for joining us, Supervisor Smith, and I'd like to turn the floor over to you if you have any comments, remarks.
Thank you, Michael. I just want to thank those people from the community that are at this meeting. It's really important that we get community feedback through this process. It is a process. It takes some time. This is the beginning, and Michael will be able to talk about the details, but this is talking about our comprehensive plan, which provides the guidance for land use. And so we're doing what's called the screening. We're taking a high-level look at what was submitted by people to decide what should move forward for a more in-depth study. And your feedback is important now. And following the process, we have all the information on the county website. And I please ask you to sign up for my newsletter. We will continue to put information out on the newsletter as we go through this process. So you can either go to sully@fairfaxcounty.gov and email my staff and they'll help you. Or if you go to the Fairfax County website and click on supervisors and click on Kathy Smith, you can find out how to sign up for the newsletter. But I welcome your attendance tonight and interest in hearing your questions. I will be turning off my camera, but I will be here through the whole meeting. So thank you, everybody, for being here.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Supervisor Smith. Let me see if I can go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Now, what inevitably happens is I can no longer see anyone. So if someone would just say, yes, we can see the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. So tonight, as Supervisor Smith mentioned, we will continue our discussion in the Sully District of the site-specific plan amendment nominations that came forth as a part of the 2022 cycle. We have about 5 nominations to go through tonight. We anticipate about 20 minutes or so for each of those nominations. The nominators themselves are also here to provide a brief presentation and to help answer any questions that you all, the community, may have. And hopefully, if we're efficient with time, we should be able to get through by about 9 o'clock. All right, so similar to last week's meeting, we'll start this evening with a brief overview of the SSPA process, how it relates to the county's comprehensive plan, and why your feedback this evening is important. The specific or the site-specific plan amendment process, as we call it, is an opportunity for anyone to submit a proposal for a change to the county's comprehensive plan, specifically for individual properties or a cluster of properties in a smaller area. Our county's comprehensive plan is a multi-layered document used by both county staff and our officials to help guide land use decisions across all of our communities in the county. It's a substantial document that provides recommendations for how land could be used in the future, how our environmental and cultural resources are protected, for example, and for areas where we think future growth can best be accommodated. For this reason, we often think of the comprehensive plan as a living document that continues to evolve and change over time. And SSPA represents a first step in a larger process to consider potential changes to the planning document. To help us do this, the plan is comprised of multiple elements. The policy plan is relatively broad in nature and encapsulates land use guidance that applies to every land area anywhere in the county. It includes, for example, policies related to environmental protection or housing affordability. There are policies that would apply, or these are the policies that would apply, I think, to any new or redevelopment, regardless of your location in the county. We also have area plan guidance, which provides more detailed policy for specific areas. That includes broad areas within the county, such as Centerville and or the Dulles Suburban Center. All policies between both the policy plan and our area plans are used by staff and county officials to help us evaluate potential land use changes or development proposals. There are additional elements to the comprehensive plan. We won't go through all of them tonight again, but they similarly include additional layers of information and guidance. An important component of the comprehensive plan is the county's concept for future development. This is a generalized framework we use to help us consider where future growth in the county is encouraged. There are a number of different categories you can see color-coded here on the map. Each represents a different set of recommendations for how these areas could continue to grow and develop over time. Most of tonight's nominations are in the Suburban Center designation, the Dulles Suburban Center to be specific, around the airport, with one SU08 found in our lower density residential area designation. The suburban centers are described as employment centers with core areas that encourage a mix of different uses that includes residential. And our lower density residential areas are typically located in portions of the county where the presence of environmental resources are significant. So the density or intensity of uses in these areas typically should respect the preservation of those features. To reiterate what Supervisor Smith noted in her remarks, we are at the very beginning of a long process. There are various stages of the land development process. If you're new to these types of discussions, land use discussions, then I'm sure that the county's review appears as a singular effort. However, there are multiple components to our review with different questions we try to answer along the way. This process, the SSPA screening process, precedes all other stages of review. If this is the first time many of you are seeing these proposals, it's because we are looking at them for the first time with you. So that's just to give you a sense of where we are. The planning process, the comprehensive planning process, is the first stage of a formal review, and it precedes even more detailed review processes like our zoning actions or site review. The timeline for development can vary based on the complexity at each stage, but what's most important to note is that the guidance offered at one stage of the process informs the review at a subsequent stage. So the considerations we make tonight, for example, as part of SSPA, will inform our review at the planning stage. And if the plan is amended, then the comprehensive plan guidance will then inform the zoning review, so on and so forth. So if an idea makes it to the rezoning stage, it will need to demonstrate how it meets the recommendations in the comprehensive plan, which is why considering amending the comprehensive plan is so important. And that's what our discussions will focus on tonight. So to help us organize and manage all of our comprehensive plan work, planning staff rely on what's called a work program. Effectively, it's a list of projects that the Board of Supervisors has authorized staff to work on. The types of amendments that are on the work program can vary from broader county-wide policies such as affordable housing or environmental protection that we mentioned earlier, to our more site-specific policy considerations, which we'll discuss momentarily. Our goal for this evening is to begin to discuss the 5 proposals that are in your local communities, and for staff to learn what your thoughts and considerations are for each of them. This is all in an effort to help the board determine which ideas should be added to our 2023 work program. All right, so we received a total of 75 nominations across the county. This was the first year that we did a county-wide SSPA process. In previous years, we had divided the county in half. We received a total of 10 nominations in the Sully district. And on December the 6th, the board took action against the original list that was submitted, and opted to remove just a few of the nominations that were submitted and pass the rest on into the screening phase, which is where we are today. So from this point on, there are a total of 70 nominations across the county that we're looking at, again, 10 of which are within your district. So this brings us to the screening phase. So to help us think through the ideas that were submitted, staff will screen each proposal, or as we call it, nominations, for its merits. And we're trying to answer a few key questions. Does the proposal support county goals and objectives? Should it be added to our work program? And if so, if it's added, what considerations should we as county staff make when we review them? To give you a sense once more of where we are in the process, we are solely focused on screening at the moment. This means that none of the ideas we've received have been added to the work program yet. That also means that we have not had the chance to fully evaluate these ideas, and won't until we're authorized to do so by the Board of Supervisors. So I'm sure that there are a number of questions many of you will have, and we will do our very best to answer as many questions as we can based on what we know so far. Some of you, again, are likely well aware of the land development process, and some of you may be less so. That's okay. All of your questions we welcome. However, our process, again, attempts to answer questions in stages. So the screening process and the plan amendment process represents the first stages of the county's overall review. And since we have not yet had the opportunity to formally evaluate any proposal, what we hope to identify tonight, again, are what are the considerations we need to be thinking about if we are authorized to study these further. So what are your preliminary thoughts? What considerations do you find important when looking at these ideas? What are the concerns that you have? But also, what are the opportunities that you see with some of these proposals? If the items are added to the work program, our next stage after SSPA, we will then begin to analyze each of the proposals and then be able to provide you all with a better understanding of any of the potential impacts. So what happens if a nomination passes?
Michael,
Yes, sir.
May I ask a quick question? I know
Sure.
you can't be specific about timelines, but can you maybe talk to the order of magnitude of the timeline of the process between SSPA and screening and zoning and so on? Are we talking weeks, months, years? Maybe you could comment on that.
Absolutely, that's a really great question. So by order of magnitude, I would say that the SSPA process, because it's preliminary and because we haven't spent a lot of staff resources on it, it typically moves very quickly. We are anticipating, and you'll see this in a slide that's coming up, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. We are anticipating taking this to the board by, I believe, late March or early April. And it's at that point where the board will decide which items make it onto the work program. Now, here's what's most important. We don't yet know how each of these items will be prioritized. We already have work on the work program that staff is working on. So there will need to be some thinking about how any proposal, if it makes it, is prioritized, essentially. And that will impact its timing. So there are ideas that could move forward as soon as within the next 2 or 3 months that the board will ask us to start working on. And then there may be ideas that we don't start working on until later in the year or 2024. depending on the volume. I can't give you an exact answer for the specific nomination that you're probably interested in. It's going to have to be weighed and balanced with a number of other considerations, but we will communicate with you all about where we are in any of those processes and what those timelines are well in advance. So just to make you aware, hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So again, if a nomination makes it onto our work program, as I just mentioned, the board will work with staff in prioritizing that work across the list. If there are proposals, for example, that we think strongly align with county objectives or other county initiatives, they may be evaluated sooner than other items. This will include thinking through how all of the items work together on our work program. So what this means for you, again, is that the timeline for considering a proposal will vary, and regardless of the timing, we will do our absolute best to make sure that you all are aware and engaged. Likewise, what happens if a nomination does not make it or does not pass screening, rather? Well, it obviously does not make it onto our work program. However, there are a couple of important notes. New nominations could be submitted for the same property in a future SSPA cycle. We offer these cycles every 2 years. However, the nominator would need to demonstrate a change in the proposal with sufficient justification if it is reconsidered in the future. So I just want to put that out there. We always accept ideas, but we do ask that the nominators provide a justification for an idea, whether it's new or if it's resubmitted. I'll also note that while any of today's proposals may not move forward, it does not mean that a property could not redevelop in the future under its current plan recommendation or its current zoning designation. So it doesn't mean that nothing can happen on the property. It can't, but it can redevelop under its current guidelines. We'll show you what those are as we move through the presentation a little bit later as well. Here's that overall timeline for SSPA, and it identifies some of the steps that have been taken to date. We are continuing to hold community meetings across the county, and we'll do so, I think, over the next couple of weeks. Following the meetings, there will be a series of Planning Commission workshops, which are open to the public for participation. There, the Planning Commission will further discuss the nominations and develop a recommendation for which of those should be advanced for further review. Following the Planning Commission workshop, we are anticipating making a recommendation to the board regarding the work program somewhere between late March and early April of 2023. Our goal between now and the workshops is to summarize all of the feedback that we've been hearing from all of our community engagements, including what we'll hear tonight. And we certainly invite you all to participate in the Planning Commission workshops beginning late February again, early March. The dates that we have may change a little bit, so please stay tuned to our website to stay informed about when those dates may be, or feel free to reach out to me directly if you have questions. So, on to our nominations for this evening. We again received 10 total nominations across the Sully district. We covered the Southern Sully nominations last Wednesday. Those are the items that you see in black. And tonight we're going to talk about the items to the north that you see highlighted in gold. In case you were wondering, there aren't any significant nominations, I would say, within a half mile of the Sully district. There were some nominations just north of the Dulles Toll Road in Drainsville. And there are some additional nominations in the Fair Oaks area in Springfield. If you're interested in those items, those meeting postings will also be online. And just to reiterate, the South Sully meeting from last week will be online as soon as possible. Really quickly, we have a lot of folks on the call tonight. If you have questions as we open up the floor to discuss each nomination, we do ask that you raise your hand just to help us manage the folks that would like to speak. You are also welcome to leave your comments or questions in chat. And again, we will do our very, very best to try to capture those and read those aloud. If you hear an item or if you hear a point made that you agree with, you'll have the option to just raise your hand or show support in the chat, and that'll help us be more efficient with time and moving forward. All of the features that you need if you're new to Teams are right across the top bar that you see there. So as we talk through each of our nominations this evening, we will identify our preliminary considerations. The nominators are also here to briefly talk with you all about their proposal and to help answer questions. You will likely see a number of technical terms that we like to use to describe a volume or an amount of development, terms like FAR for floor area ratio or square footage. If you're unfamiliar with these terms, that's okay. We've asked nominations to include concept drawings to help us illustrate what's being thought about and to help give you all a better sense of what's being proposed. As I noted before, we will identify the current comprehensive plan for each property as well as the proposed change to the comprehensive plan. And this will be the crux of staff's evaluation. We will pause for about 10 minutes or so after each proposal for your questions and comments. And with that, I think we can jump right into our first nomination. Our first item here is at, I believe, 3870 Thunderbolt Place, or 3870, excuse me, Centerview Drive. This is on a 3.7 acre vacant parcel. It's just to the northwest of the intersection of Centerville Road and Route 50. So if you're familiar with the area, the Route 28 is just off screen here to the left. The site is currently planned for office and industrial flex use up to about a 0.35 FAR. That's similar to the office buildings and industrial buildings that you see to the north here. And the nomination proposes to add an option for affordable independent living use that may include continuing care or a continuing care facility and other senior living uses with supporting amenities. In total, I think the nominator is looking at about 250 affordable senior living units in all. And we have a concept here that was shared. You can see on your left a top-down view of the site. The access points, there's a couple along Thunderbolt Place, as well as some interparcel access to the east here, to the adjoining hotel. The nominator has also provided a number of elevations to give you a sense of the scale of the project. So some of staff's preliminary considerations. First, the provision of housing, affordable housing in particular for special populations, which includes seniors with low incomes, is supported by the county. We have a number of initiatives that are looking to increase the housing supply specifically for those with the greatest need. We also want to think about the compatibility of this use, not just with what's there today, but with the potential future development of the area. I believe the area is currently zoned with an industrial use, and so we'll need to be mindful that that use can be developed by right when thinking about this particular nomination. We'll also want to think about open space and the on-site amenities. We'd like to encourage that on-site amenities are supportive of the target population, in this instance, seniors, as well as pedestrian connections to nearby walking trails and sidewalks. So this is in a suburban center area, which is one of the areas that we noted in our concept for future development, and it is encouraging for this type of use typically. So with that, I'm going to keep my presentation relatively short, and I'd like to invite Mike Van Atta, who is the representative for the nominator. Mike, the floor is yours, sir. You stop sharing.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate everyone's time tonight. Thank you for joining. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just a very quick presentation. Can everyone see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, I'm going to keep my remarks brief as well. I thought Michael did a great job summarizing proposal. I'm Mike Manata, land use planner with McGuire Woods, speaking on behalf of the nominator, Agape Property Management, Inc. And they are, again, proposing an SSPA nomination in order to permit an option for independent living use, continuing care facility use, and or other senior living uses with supportive amenities, all with affordable housing sort of top of mind. And so just a little bit of background, Agape Health Management, Inc. or Agape Property Management is a subsidiary of Agape Health Management, Inc., which is a family-owned and managed business. And they passionately believe in ensuring our community's aging population is appropriately cared for. I'm joined by representatives tonight of Agape, including Daniel Choi, Andrew Park, and Stella Song, as well as members of our design team. And Agape actually currently owns and operates 3 adult daycare facilities in Northern Virginia, providing quality care to elderly and disabled individuals. And really building off the success of these facilities, Agape is pursuing additional facilities that logically co-locate affordable senior housing with their well-established adult daycare services. And so in this instance, just to sort of give you a little bit more of the context that Michael went over, you're north of Route 50, west of Centerville Road, and east of Route 28. Also note that the property has frontage on Thunderbolt Place within the Dulles Business Park. Some characteristics of the site that Michael already covered. Not going to spend a lot of time here. It's I-5 zoned the I-5 district. It's currently vacant. It actually has an existing zoning approval for a hotel that was never constructed. Property is surrounded by existing hotel uses on 3 sides, as well as other low-rise commercial properties across Thunderbolt Place. And so, while there is industrial zoning out here, I think a lot of the uses that you've seen are stable, and it has sort of developed away from your traditional industrial uses into more hotel and other sort of various commercial uses. We'll point out that the site has the benefit of being adjacent to an existing pond and trail network, which we think is going to be a really great amenity, and we try to design around that. Michael covered the existing plan recommendation for office and industrial uses, and again, we would like to change that to add an option for the affordable independent living or senior living uses. Getting into sort of the meat of it, again, here's our concept plan, which shows a senior living facility which could have up to 250 senior living apartments and supportive amenities. It is envisioned that all of the units would be reserved at 60% area median income or lower, and all the units will be designed specifically and equipped with universal design features, accommodate the needs of seniors, and you would certainly have a range of enhanced ADA accessibility throughout the design of the entire site and building. Building would be oriented to maximize the view shed of the adjacent pond, and that also provides stormwater management for the site. I thought staff's considerations were great. Open space amenities areas would be very important to us, and right now we're showing those oriented to the rear of the site to take advantage of that pond network, that scenic amenity, the walking paths, tie into all of that. In terms of the on-site amenities, it would be a very amenitized site and building. So, within the building, you would have an adult daycare, on-site pharmacy, visiting doctor's office, physical therapy rooms, fitness and recreation, and other things inside the building, then outdoor as well, a range of outdoor amenity spaces such as community gardens, we think would be a great addition here. A lot of supportive services as well to support the use, and so we'd have on-site staff made available to facilitate and support the daily living of the facility's residents, and this is something that Agape does really well with their other uses that they have in the area. But so we'd be looking at providing not just sort of nursing and supervision, but also a range of services, including transportation, meal services, coordinating with third-party providers for in-home care, and other sort of a la carte specific needs for the residents. I think one thing that's important to reference is that it's anticipated that most of the residents will rely on the shuttle service provided by Agape, so you're going to likely see a reduction in vehicle trips compared to what could be developed by right here. Architecturally, Michael showed some of these as well, looking at up to 5-story building designed to be compatible with the surrounding properties, designed with high-quality building materials, including appropriate noise mitigation in accordance with the county policies. And just sort of a quick summary of the benefits for this. At a minimum, you're developing a productive use for a vacant property that has an outdated and obsolete zoning approval for additional hotel uses. And so instead, you're looking at something that's going to address and further a number of well-settled county objectives, especially geared towards increasing the type and overall supply of affordable and senior housing. And really, you're going to deliver one of the single largest infusions of new affordable units into Western Fairfax. As I mentioned, you're going to get fewer impacts and better compatibility with the adjacent uses than unproffered uses that could occur in the existing I-5 district. One of those things being a reduction in vehicle trips. You're going to diversify the mix of uses within the Dulles Suburban Center for overall enhanced viability, provide new customers for nearby commercial uses, and new job opportunities for the greater Chantilly area, as there would be job opportunities at this site as well to support the residents. So that is a very high-level summary of what we are looking at. We're very excited about it, confident that the design and operation of the proposed senior living facility will fit within the context of the existing and planned uses in the area, and that the site and building design will ensure compatibility with the surrounding properties. I think it's important to mention that the planning and zoning process will require the site design be subjected to the high quality standards of the Dulles Suburban Center. And so to that end, we have submitted a rezoning application so we can move forward on this project, as soon as possible, obviously, pending us working through the SSPA nomination. And so, with that, really thank everyone for their time tonight, and we're happy to take any questions or feedback.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And so now what we want to do is to open the floor to you all. Again, if you would like to make a comment or you have a question, we ask that you would select the hand raise button at the top of your screen. Or if you'd like to leave a comment in chat, we're happy to share that and provide a response. I see one hand raised. Mr. and Mrs. Shriman Gurung, and sorry if I mispronounced the name. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So I don't know if this is a dumb question or not, but I'll answer it anyway. You're proposing to put 250 units in Thunderbolt Place. Are these residents expected to have their own transport, or do we need to think about integrating with Fairfax County public transport or senior transport in some way?
Michael, I can take a first crack at that. The Agape will be providing shuttle services, and they actually do this at their other facilities right now. They'll be providing shuttle services for the residents to all the surrounding amenities, whether it's adjacent shopping centers, other, Dulles Airport, you name it. We will be designing the site to have enough surface parking in accordance with the county's required parking rates. So there will be, will be available to have, residents with vehicles on site. That being said, I think the majority of the folks will be utilizing our shuttle services. That said, there are county, to your point, there are public transportation options available. I think there's a bus stop within walking distance. If BRT comes here, I think there's some BRT bus rapid transit stations that are planned nearby. So you do have walking distance and actually, decent pedestrian network to get there. But again, I think we'd really be relying heavily on our own private shuttle services. Good question.
Okay, thank you. No, I was just kind of thinking about it. I know the hotels in that area, they all have shuttles, of course, because it's close to the airport. But in terms of public transport, it's a bit of a grey zone. There's a bus stop on Centerville and there's one on 50, and I'm not sure I want seniors crossing 50 to get to the bus stop.
Sure.
But okay, thank you.
Great question. Thank you, Mike. Other comments? Thoughts on staff's considerations? Anything that folks would like to add to that? It's okay. I won't call on anyone. I do want to leave just a few more moments in case someone's thinking of a question. right, well, I won't belabor the point. If you do have a question as we move through the presentation for this, again, my email address is my name, michael.burton@fairfaxcounty.gov, or feel free to leave the question in chat, and a staff member will do our best to respond to it, okay? Mike, thank you. Let's see if I can pull up the screen here. We'll move on to our next nomination. All right, so our second nomination is not far. It's just up Route 50, and it's right at the intersection of Route 50 and the Loudoun County line. It concerns a 9.6 acre parcel that is set away from Route 50, so it will need some level of interparcel access to provide that vehicular connection. But it's just up against the southern portion of Cub Run, which you can see at the top of your screen. Now, a significant portion of this site is in an environmentally sensitive area. It's what we call a resource protection area, or RPA. There are floodplains located on site. And if you can see on the map, there is a sanitary sewer easement that kind of dissects the site here. It's this triangular portion where the development is being proposed. And I do just want to kind of note that, and it's outside of that environmentally sensitive zone. The area, as is down the street, is currently planned for office and industrial flex use, also up to a 0.35 FAR, which is similar to the uses that you see here to the south. And the nomination is proposing to add an option for a warehouse distribution use, or an interim vehicle parking storage, similar to some of the vehicle storage areas that you see on the other side of the Loudoun County line there. I believe the facility that they're looking at is about 14,000 square feet of industrial use. If I can switch over to the concept here. Here you can see the outline of that triangular piece once again, the sanitary sewer easement that runs along the edge of the property, one structure, and it looks like with a couple of storage bays, or a few storage bays. So some of staff's preliminary considerations are, of course, the protection of the environmental features that are located nearby and on site. That will require significant review for anything to happen on this property. Interparcel access, as highlighted, is also going to be needed, and so coordination with the adjacent properties is a must. And we've noted that there's a presence of general archaeological resources in the area, and so we may require that an archaeological survey be conducted if this development is allowed to move forward. Similarly, this is also in what we would consider a suburban center area, and the proposed uses conform with that. And without further ado, I'd like to re-invite Mr. Mike Van Atta back to the stage for his presentation.
Great. Thank you again, Michael, and it's me again. Again, Mike Van Atta, Land Use Planner with McGuire Woods. This time speaking on behalf of A&A Contracting, Inc. And can you all see my screen in the presentation that's up?
Yeah.
Great. So A&A is proposing this SSPA nomination to permit some flexibility for warehousing uses on the vacant site, as well as an option for the parking of vehicles. And just I guess a little bit of background about A&A. A&A Contracting has been serving the DMV for over 50 years. They have locations in Loudoun County and Fairfax County. They specialize in industrial rigging solutions, logistics management, handling and storage, and transportation services, and in particular, the storage of materials for the local tech and data center industry. And I am joined by representatives of A&A, as well as our design team. And I'm again going to keep my remarks brief. And I thought Michael did a great job again of summarizing the location and the site conditions. One thing I will mention is that we do have access easements with the adjacent property to access the site. And so while it does not have direct frontage onto Route 50, there is legal access to the property I will say we've explored it from Loudoun County, and there's some on the west. It's actually the county border right here, borderline. There's some significant grade off to the west, and so it'd be very tough to accommodate access in a different direction. And we did point out the environmental constraints. This shows it as well. So everything in the lighter color is actually within a resource protection area and floodplain. The area outside of that lighter green is not, and that any development property would be limited to the areas outside of the environmental areas with environmental constraints. The comprehensive plan, it does call for office and industrial flex uses, and we are not proposing to do something all that different. We're looking at warehouse, distribution, or vehicle parking, or similar industrial uses. But there's a little bit of a backstory as to why we need the SSPA plan amendment. And so we had actually, I guess a few years ago, we had filed a rezoning from the existing I-3 district to the I-5 district to actually permit warehousing uses, because the warehousing uses are not a by right option in the existing I-3 district. And they limit the availability of uses. The list of permitted uses in the I-3 district is very limited. And so when A&A purchased this site, we submitted the rezoning in early 2020. So good timing for us to rezone the property to I-5 district to permit those warehousing uses. It was indefinitely deferred mid-process due to a number of reasons, both, probably primarily was economic uncertainty presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. And when we initially filed this rezoning, county planning and zoning staff had determined that the warehousing use that we were proposing was in conformance with the comprehensive plan's existing recommendation for industrial flex uses. And that's because we were going to have a small office associated with the warehousing use. When we re-engaged the county to reactivate the zoning application later last year, it was relayed to us that the county had updated its position related to industrial flex uses, I think related to a different property that spurred this. And therefore, what we were looking at with the warehouse use in a small office was not going to be considered industrial flex anymore. And so given that determination, the cleanest way to move forward on this was to amend the comprehensive plan to sort of get that holistic approach and to get everything to line up. So it's that change in circumstance that actually led us here to pick back up a zoning application that we had been looking at before. Looking at the attached concept plan, everything you're seeing is outside of those environmental constraints. So the building footprint, limits of disturbance, none of that would touch the RPA or the floodplain. We would be looking at some improvements related to vehicle access, pedestrian connectivity, landscaping, stormwater management, all within the meeting the design guidelines of the Dulles Suburban Center. And again, most of the property will remain heavily vegetated, and we'd likely look at some commitments to some restoration efforts in environmentally sensitive areas, such as removal of invasive species. We are looking for some flexibility to potentially do either an interim or ultimate option for really develop the site of the parking lot. It would be the exact same footprint as where the warehouse could go. So again, outside of any of the environmental constraints, really just match that limit of disturbance. But in this option, this has to do with the flexibility for the uses, given that this is a site with very difficult, you can't see it from the right of way, and it's got some, you have to sort of snake your way back from an access perspective. In terms of some of the viable uses on the site, as we've been talking to those who are interested in using the site, one option would be to develop the site as a parking lot specific to off-site parking for nearby auto dealerships. It would not be sort of open parking for all. It would be limited to storage of new cars and/or recently used cars, so not sort of like a junkyard or anything like that, but sort of the nice new cars. And it would just be that extra inventory for these adjacent dealerships. So you wouldn't have the sale of vehicles occurring on this property. You wouldn't have customers coming here. It would simply be just the storage. And you'd still get all those other, site improvements designed to meet the Dulles Suburban Center guideline. Just to sort of wrap it up, this SSPA nomination does support a number of the county objectives and emerging community interests, including economic development, preserving industrial zone land and increasing supply of industrial uses, and mitigating impacts to environmentally sensitive areas. Really the flexibility that we've talked about with the different options will afford the opportunity to bring meaningful investment and compatible uses to the developable portion of a landlocked parcel. And again, implementation of this would require the zoning approval, and again, subject the site to the applicable design requirements. And just to sort of give one last thought, the development under current comprehensive plan guidance really isn't feasible given the lack of visibility from the public right away, some site constraints, and the limited permissibility, really limited list of options under by right zoning. So greater flexibility to include warehousing uses and/or parking vehicles, allow the nominator to establish productive use of the vacant site, maintaining compatibility with adjacent properties, and actually allow the nominator to further locate operations in close proximity to the industries they serve. And so, given that we have already had a zoning application on file, we'd like to, reinitiate that as soon as we could. Again, obviously, pending, working through the SSPA process. So, thank you again for your time tonight. And again, I'm happy to take any questions or your feedback.
Awesome. Thanks again, Mike. And once again, I'd like to extend the opportunity to folks, if you have thoughts, questions, or comments, either for the nominator or for staff as it relates to our considerations, we're happy to answer them for you. I figured this one was so far away from most folks that you probably wouldn't get too many comments, but I'll give it just a few more seconds. If you have any thoughts or comments about the A&A contracting proposal, let us know. Again, you're welcome to leave a comment in chat or to send it to staff directly if you'd like us to log a comment. Hearing none, we'll keep the train moving. Thanks again, Mike.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. All right, and we'll move to our next nomination. I am taking these out of order just slightly. Let me see if I can pull this up here. And if someone could just let me know, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The latter two items are relatively adjacent to each other, so we wanted to put, I think, SU003 and SU10 together. So if you're here for those items, you'll have a chance to speak as we work through both of them. But I did want to talk about SU08 first. This one is located generally at 3155 West Ox Road. It concerns multiple parcels at a total of about 4.3 acres. It includes one commercially zoned property right there in the center, which I believe was a former garden center. The area in general is planned for 0.5 to 1 dwelling unit per acre. And the nomination is looking to add a plan option to the comprehensive plan that would allow for up to 2 dwelling units per acre. In total, the parcels that are there today, and I believe there are 5, if I'm not mistaken, would be subdivided to allow for up to 8 single-family detached residential units. Let's switch over quickly to the concept that were shared. So this will give you just a general sense of the existing parcel layout here. This is the former garden center here in the center. And you can see the multiple lots as they were subdivided. I do believe that there is an access easement towards Southfield Drive, and then access here along West Ox Road, which is to the bottom of your image here. All right, some of staff's initial concerns: compatibility. The additional density is of course above the base plan recommendation, and so we'll need to think about what benefits that additional density brings to the county or to the community. And we'll need to think about how that increased density works. Although be it modest, works with the adjacent communities, particularly the single family homes to the east. Open space also, based on the concept provided, is something that we need to think about a little bit more. Given the amount of units there, we'd like to have some level of open space, amenity space for residents there. So additional consideration will be needed for not only the access to the site, but also the overall design and the arrangement of the total of 8 units. This is the only nomination in our Sully district that's in a low density residential area category. So it does acknowledge the presence of environmentally sensitive areas, and we'll need to think about to what degree that increased density might impact those features. All right, and with that, I'd like to invite the representative for this nomination, Sarah Mariska, to the floor. Sarah, it is all yours.
Thank you, Michael. Let me share my presentation. Okay, are you all seeing my screen and hopefully can hear me? Excellent. I see heads nodding. As Michael said, I'm Sarah Mariska. I'm a land use attorney with Oden, Feldman, and Piddleman, and we are pleased to be here tonight. I know that there are a number of folks from the adjacent community here tonight, and I'm happy to be here and providing some background and listening to some questions and comments that it sounds like you all have put together, which we appreciate. As Michael mentioned, this is actually 6 different parcels that make up about a little over 4 acres, or about 4.35 acres total. And at the center is a bit of an anomaly. It is zoned to the C8 district, a more intense commercial district than we would normally see in this part of the county, and of course was used as a garden center for a very long time. I think what I notice on this is just how out of character that particular site is based on the surrounding context and how it's almost entirely impervious surface today. Not only is it zoned the C8 commercial district, but it is also planned for retail and other uses on that central parcel, which I think in the nominators looking at these different parcels, that seems to be out of character with the surroundings. So that was really the primary driver for some of this nomination, but the nominator does own a number of the adjacent properties, and so we wanted to provide a nomination that allowed us some thought as to what could happen today in a by right scenario, or what we think might make more sense based on our proposal. So as I mentioned, and as Michael alluded to in his introductory remarks, even though we are proposing something different, there are still options that could be used to develop the site based on its existing zoning classification. And so to that end, we took a look at what that might look like on the site. And what that could look like is 5 single-family homes, and then the property in the middle that is zone C8 could develop up to a 0.5 FAR. And what that would mean is about up to 13,000 square feet of retail or other commercial uses, as well as associated parking, dumpsters, all those types of things that would accompany a commercial development. What is on the screen right now is not showing a 13,000 square feet of development, but is showing about 6,600 square feet of development. And the owners have had interest in that, and that might be something such as a veterinary clinic, some doctor's offices, a dry cleaners, uses such as that have expressed some interest in this particular location. And so this is one concept for what could happen on that commercial property. We've shown the possibility that we could develop this as several different units to allow those different types of users to locate here. And then beyond that central commercially zoned site, we have looked at the residential use that could develop by right without this comprehensive plan nomination. And what is on the screen is those 5 single-family houses that would be could accommodate some larger homes on the order of 5,500 square feet. And again, we are showing some kind of possible layout and how that might look in the context of the surroundings. On this slide, we've tried to put together an illustrative of what we think is a better option for the community, and that would remove the commercial designation on the central parcel, and then allow for a zoning to the R2 district. And what that would result in is 8 single-family dwellings. We think that there's a number of benefits with this, largely that we could accommodate some fronting improvements, some usable open space, some pedestrian connectivity to the neighborhood, and also that the lot sizes would be consistent with the existing average lot size in the Southfield community. And just to kind of go into a little bit more detail and highlight those thoughts, again, what you're seeing on the screen is what we have thought about in terms of some sort of open space that would be accessible to the community at large. We would preserve this and allow for public access. We would incorporate some additional frontage improvements along West Ox. We would dedicate right-of-way that has not been dedicated in the past. And then also we have contemplated some sort of pedestrian connectivity here that I'm trying to outline on the screen. This, again, is a concept. We have definitely have time to talk about other ideas that folks might have, but this was one suggestion that we wanted to put together for purposes of discussion, that I think is really attractive potentially. And I think overall, we really do think that it makes a lot of sense to remove that commercial designation for the central parcel, because really that garden center is no longer there. And I think given the context along West Ox and adjacent properties, that does not necessarily make the most sense on that parcel. With that, I know Ping and Leap and I believe Greg are on the phone, and if there are other highlights that I may have missed, please jump in, and really we are here very early and interested in feedback on these thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. I do have one hand raised, two actually. First was Mr. Ramesh Kalwala, and forgive me if I've mispronounced your name.
No, that's correct.
Awesome. Thank you for joining, sir. Please go right ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Ramesh. I'm the owner for the 3154 Southfield Drive. And the concern is when they are developing like the 3154 and the adjacent property 3148, those two are in a little low area. So when they do all this grading, so our drain field and our wetlands will be disturbed. So I don't know how they're going to be laid out. So the house will be flooded if they do it, whenever they are doing the grading. I don't know how they're going to do the grading, but our two lots are in the low level. So that's our concern.
Okay.
One of the concerns.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. And you said your lots. What was that address one more time, sir, if you don't mind repeating?
3154 Southfield Drive.
Okay.
Hi, this is Leap Kim with Greenway Engineering, the civil engineer for this application, and I can speak directly towards that concern.
Okay.
With respect to any grading or stormwater management items, we will certainly follow the recommendations and the requirements set forth in the Fairfax County ordinance, as well as their public facilities manual, to ultimately improve the stormwater outfall conditions relative to any runoff generated by this site. We don't anticipate any off-site grading or impacts to your property. Everything with respect to stormwater runoff will be contained within an on-site stormwater management facility that's not specifically shown here in this visual, but it's something that we will contemplate internally to ensure that there are no impacts to downstream neighbors.
So, we don't know it because we are not a civil engineer. Yes, you are the best person to, but We just don't want to impact our drain field because all our the Southfield drives are on what do you call the sewer systems. So if anything happens, our drain field will be impacted and all of the stuff, you know.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. That's an important note. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have Mr. Jason Van Patten. Mr. Van Patten?
Mr. Burton, I can wait until the Southfield, the rest of the Southfield residents go. I'm a little north, but I have some comments about this, so I can stand by and wait for the folks to talk.
You got it, sir. Just put your hand back up, and just because I will forget, but we'll come back to you. Mrs. Dale McGrath.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Burton and everyone. We live in the second house on Southfield. I've lived here 27 years. I'm really familiar with the land and the history. I'm a former stream water monitor. I'm an environmentalist. We all agree that we should get rid of the commercial lot. It was formerly a service station. It was a feed store. And the nursery didn't get much business. But one thing we don't agree on is we want to keep the R1 zoning. It's very important to us. We have some stormwater issues. Lot 31A, the lot on the map that you have up, with the little park, that's a wetland. It has a stream flowing that's parallel to the first house, to the Azadi household. It's totally sensitive. My second point, I want to be fast, is there's an open well behind my home. It's in the corner of lot 12A. It's cannot be developed within 100 feet around it. It's been, a worry for these last 20 years. It's not even on any plats. We are concerned about privacy. We're mostly concerned. We all have septic systems. Luckily, mine is in the front of my home, because of that open well. But the other homes, the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes, that's 6 actually, that circle, we're scared to death of more flooding. We already have a flooding problem here. We get notices from FEMA every year about we live in a floodplain. I would like to see 31A go under an environmental study and be considered as an RPA. The stream starts about where that little circle is on your park, and it goes all the way down under Southfield, and it goes through our 14 acres of common land that's the Stream Valley and into Fox Mill District Park, all the way to the Potomac, and becomes our drinking water. I'm really not happy that you were, pitching a dry cleaner. How environmentally incorrect is that for our area? And the last point is, when this was a service station, it has a buried gasoline storage tank right behind my property. There were federal workers in hazmat suits 25 years ago, and it's still there. If you dig around, you're going to disturb that. And, it could be active right now. We could have terrible solvents in our soil. So I don't think I've forgotten anything, but the houses at real risk are number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Every house is at risk if this is developed in the wrong way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McGrath. I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I believe it's Mr. Yes, sir.
Mrs. McGrath, this is Jason Van Patten. I live a little bit north of you. That stream you're talking about, does that feed Little Difficult Run?
It's the headwater, yes.
Then that entire area should be RPA.
When I was a monitor and I was on a task force, I asked, and they said, no, it's a swale. And I said, no, it's perennial. You know, it might have been during a drought, you know, year, but it is not a swale. It's, you know, the Azadis who are here tonight, they can testify. It's about a foot deep, and you know, it's a bona fide wetland there.
So
And I would like to see the floodplain lines re-examined. I mean, they change. You know, they change every year. You know, where the floodplain limits are. You know.
yes, ma'am. So it sounds like that there are a number of environmental concerns that have been raised and are being raised that you would like us to consider or think about with this nomination.
Definitely, and plus the animals. We have a barred owl back there. You know, fox den, raccoons. There are many animals that live there, and that's one of my concerns. Is if you know, if and when this develops, I'm concerned about their welfare. I mean, I don't know what the county does. I don't know if you go in and send a biologist and examine the living conditions, but a lot of snakes, turtles, you know, all the indicators of a wetland.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Kumar, I can't see the last name, Chandran?
Yeah, hi, Burton. Yeah, this is Kumar Chandan. Thank you. So I live on 3156 Southfield Drive, which is proposed adjacent to the Lot 6, what is shown in this diagram. So the main reason for us in purchasing this property, I mean, they're all you know, R1 zoned, and that was the main reason we purchased this, because the adjacent lots were all zoned similar. Now, changing the characteristics of zoning suddenly changes the neighborhood. So that means the setback requirements changes. So I will have a neighbor 8 feet of my boundary. So that's what is being proposed. Lot 6 in the diagram is shown with 8 feet as the setback, which is totally not acceptable, because we purchased the lot, we purchased our property considering that there would be a R1 setback whenever it's being constructed. The second point I wanted to raise is my lot is almost, I think it is in a grade, it is almost at the lower end of the spectrum here. So I already had a flooding once, and the county officials came, inspected this, and we had to totally revive and reinstall a lot of additional pumps to alleviate the situation. So any change in the zoning is going to drastically increase the impervious surface area. And already we are at risk of flooding, and we have taken, every time there is a heavy rains, we make sure that we have additional pumps installed there. So this is going to affect our property, and of course all the other 5 properties that are abutting this property. And as gentleman mentioned previously, the septic, we are all on septic fields, and if the perk changes, if the impervious layer changes, then that's going to significantly affect the water table there, and it's going to affect all our perk capacity. So that's so 3 things, and also as Dale was mentioning, the environmental conditions. So we suspect there could be some, because this was used, that commercial property was used for fuel storage, and any disturbance in that soil, probably it's down under the soil, and that's going to be spilled over into the runoff at some point, and it's going to affect all the other properties neighborhood. So that's those were the 3 or 4 points that I had to make.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chandran. So buffering, setback impacts to septic fields as well, and of course echoing the sentiment of the environment. I want to be mindful as well, just that we have a couple of other items to get through. If you haven't already left a comment, or if you've heard your comment mentioned, you're welcome to do so in the chat. We'll definitely make sure we log that. And I've also received a number of emails and information from the adjacent community. I'm not sure where the boundaries lie, that also shared some of this information also. So thank you for that. We have time for, I think, 2 more comments. Mr. Bud Higgins.
Thanks, Michael.
Yes,
Hey, I wanted to clear up what hasn't really been talked about yet, and this is the whole 6 lots that comprise this proposal. 3 of them are actually in a recorded subdivision, Southfield Community Subdivision. The ones on 3135 and 3143 West Ox are already in an existing subdivision, duly recorded subdivision in Southfield. And the one with the access road off of Southfield, 3152 Southfield, is also already on a recorded plat. Now, that recorded plat, Southfield Communities, was established in 1972. It was established as R1, the lots within that subdivision. And to me, that effectively establishes a promise between the community and the residents who buy property or who establish the subdivision, that it would remain R1 for perpetuity, for forever. That going in with a lot that's adjacent and pulling those lots effectively out of an existing subdivision is a reneging on that process the community's made to the people who bought lots in the subdivision and have adhered to the R1 designations. We build our houses with the right setback lines for R1. And now some lots in our subdivision will get effectively pulled out and get applied R2C designations, which allow less setback lines, more dense housing, and it's a renege on the process that the county planning has made on us as a community when we bought lots in this subdivision. Our main also question is how our subdivision will be subdivided, effectively removing them from the recorded Southfield recorded plot, or would they, if they're re-subdivided, would that add lots to the existing Southfield plat? What does it do to our HOA? Because we have, 1 house per lot, and the proposal, both of the proposals, both the 5-house and the 8-house plan, would affect the number of houses on those lots. So how does that get rectified with the way subdivisions are managed and processed, and collection of HOA dues and the enforcement of the HOA regulations? How does that square with all of a sudden 3 lots in the subdivision get merged with 3 lots outside of our subdivision? And what do we do about that?
Yes, sir. So
now I'm going to be really short, and I'll back out here because I want to give you time to get on. So we've laid out all our questions in a spreadsheet, and we've talked all about it. A lot of them we've talked about tonight, but I want to make sure the Planning Commission knows, and Michael, I think you are in possession of this spreadsheet, and it goes into these details that are much more detailed than we can cover in 20 minutes on our public comment. But I wanted to make sure you understood our fundamental concern here is this R1 to R2C redesignation, which would totally change the character of the lots that we subscribed to when we bought lots in here. That's all I have.
Perfectly summarized, Mr. Higgins, and we do anticipate working with our zoning zoning evaluation group to discuss how these proposals might impact that zoning. Some of that is still up in the air right now, since we're looking at this conceptually about what that impact might be, but it's something that we will note, and as you've mentioned, it's already in the spreadsheet that you all shared, and we will pass that along to the PC. All right, so thank you, sir. Next, I have Mr. and Mrs. Aki Przeszki. Sorry again if I'm mispronouncing names. I do apologize.
No, you're okay. This is Merdad Izadi. I live in 3144, the closest one adjacent lot to the lot that we love a lot. We call it wetland. I am a neighbor adjacent to this wetland, but it's not only me. Everybody in this small community is concerned about this wetland. We do not want it to be eliminated. I believe you don't want to. And changing from R1 to R2C, as your plan shows, majority of it will be eliminated. And environmentally, it's an impact, not to us, to everywhere. And because of my profession, I can have a clear imagination. Obviously, it's not only me tonight, that I have a very clear imagination what could be the, actually you change the image. If you bring the previous one, the image on the screen, okay, that's fine. Yes, exactly. I have been looking to my backyard towards the previous garden shop, the lot 3. I have a question. This regarding the lot before it. It's a lot, I don't know if it's lot 1 or, but it's small. That the one lot 3 in my backyard, I have been looking at this this location for 13, 14 years. What will be the finished floor for the main level, for this one? This house is located exactly on the on this steep hill towards the previous garden shop, climbing up from my backyard, getting to the level of garden shop. Level of garden shop, previous parking will be the same, most probably. So how this one will be constructed? It will be dominating all of us for the main reason that the vegetation, the existing vegetation, will never be the same. Still, if you build a house over there, part of it on a steep hill, part level, this steep hill, as the topography plans also show, partly is located on some ground at the parking level and some just up in the air. I am not technically concerned about building a house like this where partly foundations are on solid firm ground and part are not. We architects dream for these houses. We can do lots of creativity, but what about the others? Okay, there are some more concerns. We also have another question. How is the proposed plan adding open space if they are replacing the 13,000 square foot of commercial with 3 more 5,500 square foot dwellings? That's not creating green space. It's just replacing it with a different impervious surface. This is our concern. R1 is our most important concern. Let me look at my notes. Wetland. It's not my concern as an adjacent lot. It's everybody's concern. Thanks a lot, and thanks all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm going to, just for the sake of time, and I apologize, we're going to have to close the comments there. I see Mr. Joan and Steve. If you all wouldn't mind leaving Vihek, excuse me, if you all wouldn't mind leaving your comment or your question in the chat, it will be there for others to see, and then staff can help provide a response. And Mr. Van Patten, if it's okay, sir, if you think your concerns were addressed as well, I'd like to ask you to do the same, just to be mindful of others who are waiting on the call.
I have bunches of others, but I'll write.
Okay, Okay, thank you so much, sir, and I greatly appreciate the patience. Let me see if I can pull up my screen here. Thank you for this. Let me say this now while we're here. This forum isn't the only opportunity for you to submit your comments. As we mentioned before, the community has worked really hard to synthesize their comments and their concerns, and they put it together, as well as sent me images and pictures of the site. Please consider doing that. You can reach us at any time. You can reach me at any time during business hours or after if you have additional thoughts or concerns that you want to share with the staff. All right, let me pull up my screen one more time. We'll keep things moving along.
Michael, before you jump
Yeah.
into this next one, I just want to thank everyone for participating tonight and for jumping in. And I hope that I'm able to see that spreadsheet, because I think we would appreciate understanding the full range of issues and figuring out what we do to see if we can think through those. So thank you, everyone.
We
Appreciate
can
that.
certainly send them to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Please, that'd be great. Thanks, Mr. Higgins.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. And stay on the line, Sarah, because I think this one is also familiar to you. So next we have SU003. This one is located at the intersection of Centerville Road and Wall Road. It concerns 8 acres that are currently a part of the Discovery Square development. It's just next to the new, brand new Sully Community Center and very close to Sully Highlands Park. This one is a little bit interesting. So currently, the plan calls for commercial use on the property at 5% of the total development. So all of the Discovery Square development, which I think is about 67 acres, we were asking for at least 5% of that total to be dedicated to retail or commercial uses. And this proposal offers to modify that percentage or that mix of non-residential use with residential use. And I believe it brings it down to somewhere between 1.5 and 2% roughly. It just depends on how we calculate the amount of residential use. But it's a significant drop, and so that's something that we want to think about as part of the comprehensive plan amendment process. In total, they are looking at about 47,600 square feet of retail, about 50 additional single-family attached residential units or townhomes, and I believe 4 live-work units with workspace on the ground floor along Atlantis Drive. So conceptually, there are a number of conceptual images. This is just a brief image of it that you can see here on the right-hand side of your screen with a top-down plan to your left. On the bottom of the screen, you see Wall Road, Centerville Road to your right, and Air and Space Museum Parkway over to your left with the community center across the street. They are offering retail uses along Atlantis Drive, which is something that we encouraged as part of the plan as well. And then you can see the additional single-family towns to the south of the property along Yeager Drive, a new road that would cut through the development and continue the grid of streets. So with that, I will stop talking. And Sarah, if you want to talk a little bit more about the proposal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to share my screen.
I'm sorry,
Sarah.
Sarah.
Michael.
No, you're good. Actually, I think I've already explained this. Just our consideration, we do want to think about how this works within the broader land unit. Just wanted to share that. Go right ahead. Sorry.
Nope, you are fine. Okay, hopefully that is working. Thank you, Michael. I will keep this relatively brief because Michael did a great job of giving some of the background. I'm Sarah Mariska with Odin Feldman, and with me is John Elcano, as well as Brad Klein and Dan Everett. Regarding this particular nomination, I think there are a number of folks who have heard from John and Brad, so we really appreciate you joining us tonight. We have been thinking about this site for a long time. As Michael said, Discovery Square is about 67 acres, and much of it has been developed with a mix of residential use types. There are the fields, there's the community center that was just constructed, and this 8-acre site has some challenges, namely that it is currently planned for a large amount of commercial that does not make sense based on the existing market conditions. So we have been thinking about what would be a better fit for this site that would meet some of the comments that we have heard from the community, and also be in keeping with the development pattern at Discovery Square. So to that end, we have put together a plan that is a mix of both commercial uses as well as residential uses. And some of the things that we want to point out on this particular image are that there is an existing road network that's been established that does dictate how this site could be laid out. There's a 50-foot buffer along Centerville Road that is significant and also does impact the viability of commercial on these parcels. And then there also is, again, just the balance of the Discovery Square community that we are trying to make sure that we integrate with us appropriately as possible. So to that end, we've tried to be mindful of how we can tie this development to the Sully District Community Center, to the fields, and to the rest of Discovery Square, and have located commercial uses along Atlanta Street to activate that street. We've also worked to incorporate usable open spaces, which is a comment we have heard consistently from some of the residents. And then we also are working to enhance the pedestrian connections and screen parking, but still provide some community serving uses in terms of that open space and the commercial here. Just very quickly, I did want to run through, we have been thoughtful in the open spaces to try and think through how these might function in the context of Discovery Square. So on here, we have included some images that are the exact size that we have included on our concept. We are not trying to show images that are drastically different than what we can accommodate on this site, but are in fact some open spaces that are similarly sized. Another thing that we have worked to do to enliven Atlanta Street and knit this community together is to remove a roundabout and try and think through this raised crosswalk concept to try and kind of bring everything together, but still make sure that everything is a safe environment. I think what we are really excited about is the prospect of kind of a really community gathering space and some retail that would front on that space and has a lot of activity there. These are some images of what that could look like. I know it's always hard to see what this looks like and feels like. So, you know, we do have some later images that I'll conclude with. But just quickly to run through this, we are really excited to be here to think about how we might right size this commercial component based on all of the factors I think we are well familiar with, from the Amazon effect to telework to other things that have changed the marketplace for retail and commercial uses. With this concept, we are trying to integrate these new open spaces with the existing community, think about how we establish those walkable pedestrian connections, make sure that there is a safe environment to the surrounding uses. And certainly this would be a big reduction in traffic from what has been planned for this site for a long time. We think it really would complete the Discovery Square community and introduce a sense of place that is lacking in this part of the development. So with that, I'm just going to show a few images. This one is on Atlantis Street, and on the right-hand side would be this commercial component that we were talking about. There would be this community gathering space here, and on the left-hand side is the existing multifamily building on the north side of Atlantis Street. This is another view, a closer view of some of that retail. And then another view, a slightly different angle of what that community gathering space might look like. And then again, kind of an internal view of the community gathering space where we are thinking through these outdoor seating and string lights and ways that we can really make this a true gathering space for the community. So John, Dan, Brad, I'm sure I have missed something, so please jump in if there's any concluding comments that you'd like to make. Hey, John, if you're... Oh, sorry, John. Okay, go ahead, Brad. I said John was talking to either one of you guys.
Oh, I'll let John go then. I just want to know, we've worked with the homeowners in the area and the neighborhood, taken them to our other projects, and spent a lot of time trying to work on this. And the retail components are very real. They've met the tenants. They've been to the same type of space on our other project. So with that, I'll let John talk. Thanks.
Yeah, Brad, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I was going to thank the Discovery Square associations for taking the time to meet with us repeatedly, including on-site and actually touring some of the other properties that you mentioned. We don't want to hold them up too long. I see some of their names on the list, so we can, we're trying to get a right-sized retail environment that would complement the existing neighborhood and along with the amenity package.
And I'll just conclude by thanking everyone. We have been working to think through this site for a very long time. I think we have been talking to some of the community folks for about a year. So we are very interested in moving forward expeditiously and would hope to file a zoning that could track concurrently with this plan amendment. So thank you all. I look forward to comments and questions.
Thank you. And I'm going to also echo that and thank the folks who have also taken the time to send in comments and to give me a call. I probably received more comments on this item than any other, whether it would support or comments to the like. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I'm going to open the floor now to Mr. Tim Kay. Sir, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining the call. This is Tim Keating. I happen to be the president of the Discovery Square Towns Homeowner Association, as well as president of the Discovery Square Resident Owners Association, which compromises the ROA is the umbrella organization for the four divisions we have within the neighborhood. Been working with the developers and in communications with them. They've been very communicative and helpful and explaining and talking to us through what they plan to do and getting community feedback on what it is that the residents here in Discovery Square want. In general, what I'm hearing from residents, especially the original homeowners who bought new here, going back 5 years, we were all sold into this neighborhood thinking that this lot was going to be part of a walkable neighborhood where we could go to a full retail area there. We understand that that's probably not feasible, but we are very welcoming of the new proposed land use where it's more of a 50-50 usage for retail and residential. We welcome having that retail addition to the neighborhood as soon as possible. I think that most folks, wish this was already here, that we could walk down the street to, gather as a community to enjoy restaurants and other businesses and amenities. So, I think that you'll find that most of the comments and what you're hearing from most folks is that we wish this was here yesterday. We definitely are in favor of, the retail mixed use. We definitely do not want, all residential added to the lot. I think that maybe Kathy can remember back 5, 6, 7 years ago, the meeting that we had when the developers back then were proposing all residential. That definitely didn't fly with the community, but I think that this is a really good plan for the lot usage, and then we're definitely enjoying the new community center as well, and want to connect all of that with the athletic field. So with that, I'll open up to anyone else who wants to make a comment.
Awesome, Mr. Keating. Thank you for that, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Mr. Parnes, I see that you have your hands up, sir.
Let me do this and do that. Okay. I live across the way on the other side of the Centerville Road in Chantilly Highlands. When the Discovery Center development was first proposed almost 20 years ago, it was a multi-use facility. On the road opposite Kinross Circle, we're going to be apartments with first floor retail offices, apartments above them, multiple different types of housing as there are now. Across the Air and Space Museum, we're going to be offices. And the south of at this lot, is going to be retail, one commercial. So it was a fully integrated neighborhood. And as we heard from the previous speaker, that's changed. First, they got rid of the one-in-one apartments and got rid of all the commercial and retail on the first floor. We've seen it done other places in Loudoun and Fairfax where it could have been done. They chose not to do it. And then they chose to remove the office on the west side because it was impractical and they couldn't do it, and they put in more residential. I believe that the Chantilly Highlands and the Sully District Council, which were supportive of these presentations 20 years ago, were supportive because it was an integrated development. What we're seeing now is less integration and more residential. Now, residential itself isn't bad, but what we have here is a gradual diminution of what was proposed 20 years ago. Situations change, but I believe that they sold off the development rights incrementally, and all they're left with is this. And because of that, they're in a quandary. It hasn't developed in 20 years, and now they want to put residential on it. And to my mind, this makes it harder to make the remaining commercial retail into a self-community serving area. We're just going to have a few stores, as you see here, whatever the brownish buildings are. They really aren't going to be the type of full service that was expected, restaurants and other things that was proposed to the community when this development was made. And they presented this to the Chantilly Highlands Homes Association meeting post-pandemic when we started meeting again. And the turnout or the comments I received at that meeting as the Civic Affairs Committee chair for the Chantilly Highlands Homes Association were not that enthusiastic. We've been lied to. This is just bait and cut or bait and switch. You know, what was presented 20 years ago has been much diminished. And with that, I think that I'm probably going to say that I would be against this today as well, because I'm certain that unless we get that retail shortly, in 5 years, you're going to come back and it's all going to be residential. And they're just biting off everything they presented and ending up with lots and lots of residential, which by itself isn't a bad idea, but it belies what was presented to the residents when this was first submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes.
This is Neil Goldwine. I'm on telephone, so
Yes, sir.
I don't want to break in, but I do have a comment. So at an appropriate time, I appreciate to be called.
Sure. Give us 1 second, Mr. Goldwine. I'll make sure I call on you. Okay.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I saw Mr. or Mrs. Alapati Mahesh, and I'm terrible with names once more, so I apologize. But the floor is yours if you'd like to make a comment or if you have a question. And if you can hear me, you may still be on mute. Mr. and Mrs. Mahesh? All right, no worries. We'll keep moving along. Jordan?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm on the board, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. I'm just going to give my personal opinion here, which is actually to kind of split the sort of the middle ground between the prior two speakers. So we absolutely want this space to be developed. We want retail. We want to see, to be able to walk and get dinner or whatnot from our homes, all of those things, 100% agree. Cannot say that enough, and I don't want what I'm about to say to diminish that intention. It seems like there's a situation, and this is more of like a bigger picture concern for the county, that a developer at the beginning agrees to certain concessions with the county in order to develop a large project. They develop part of that project and then don't complete it, and if you will, they develop the profitable part and not the unprofitable part that they had to agree to in order to get the project, and then don't develop it, sell it to someone else, And now that other new developer is now faced with the situation of, well, it's not profitable. It doesn't make sense to them to do what the original developer committed to, was obligated to, in order to be granted this in the first place. And it becomes a situation where there's no winning, because the new developer cannot profitably do what the original developer committed to. But the original developer is now out of the picture, and it's sort of a weird version of a Texas two-step. They have shifted the liabilities to someone else, and now the other person, they're not going to develop this at a loss. So I don't blame the current developer for proposing what they are developing. And from a purely pragmatic perspective, this may be the best we can get, because this is where we are today. But I just want to raise this from a larger, broader perspective to the county, to say this is not the fault of the current developer for doing the bait and switch from what was agreed to 20 years ago. This is the best the developer can offer today. But that's because of the way this whole process has evolved.
We number one, let me say we appreciate that comment, Mr. Jordan, and completely understand it. It's a tension that comes along with long range planning in general. We like to say that we have a horizon of 20 plus years, but things do change over time. We don't have a crystal ball either, and so we are continually trying to think about how we leave enough flexibility in our plans moving forward, so that no matter what happens to the market as it ebbs and flows, that people are able to capture whatever opportunity there is at a certain time. So your comment is poignant and well taken, and I appreciate you making it. Tim, I saw that you put your hand back up. Did you have a follow-up?
No, I don't know if
Okay.
that was, maybe I inadvertently did that. I just want everybody else a chance.
All right, no worries, sir. And I'm going to ask one last time before we move for Alapati Mahesh. It looks like you're unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yep. Thank you so much for calling me back. So, so apart from this, so what is, right now we are trying to, give our opinions about the project plan in here, right? So how will that be considered? So, will that be like, do you really take the, the homeowners, whoever who lives in this community, do you take the voting of those, or you just take the comments from them? Or what is the actual plan of going for the forward? I will give the comment about this plan, but I would like to understand more about what's the next steps are.
Sure. So we staff will need to make a determination, a recommendation as to whether or not we think these items should make it to our work program. That is in parallel with the Planning Commission as well, who will review all of the nominations, all 70 across the county, in a workshop that's coming up towards the end of February. And so the comments that the community provide helps us to, one, ensure that the things that we're looking at are the things that the community is concerned about, but also that we are prioritizing the things that matter most to the community. So, for example, if environmental impacts really rise to the top for most of the community members, then we will see that as a priority as well. If that makes it to the work program, and if we start to do a full evaluation, that's where your comments come into play. So it's not only for staff, it's also for the Planning Commission, so that they can think broadly about what these impacts are, and then ultimately the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. So, because as a community member in here within the Discovery Square, so, I've been living in 8 years, right? 8 to 9 years. So, I would really, by looking at the plan, so that has, I can see like 80% of that land is actually been again giving it to the residential. When I say again, previously, I'm not sure if anybody could recollect, there was a 19 acres lot, 18 to 19 acres lot, right, next to the Air and Space Museum Parkway. That was initially been allotted to the commercial, but later on it was converted to the residential. So at that time also there was some, like whoever the builder or any anybody like, with as also we are also so quite new at that time, and they kind of promised a lot of the, the things, that we would do this and that kind of thing, and we really like, I mean, we were not part of those meetings that were happened at the time and whatever the decisions. So that went on in a residential way. Now, again, 80% of this land is what I'm seeing over there. It's completely, again, giving back to the residential. With that, what we're doing is, so for any of like parents who has a kids in here, if they would like to take the kids to whatever the activities or something, you're not seeing any not a lot in here. So only the people who live in this community will face that issue. So I'm really not accepting that 80% of the occupancy with the residential. And I think even the residential people who is actually coming into that residential places will also feel the same thing. And if even, I'm just giving an example, if I want to take my kids to the swimming classes or something like that, I'm not seeing anything close by. Whatever that is like 2 miles away from here, they're all been pretty occupied with the people who are living over there. So I mean, frankly speaking, that this is not at all acceptable. As I also checked with community members in here, with my friends and everything, I also collected their opinions too, and really everybody has their problems with that.
Okay.
Mike, I think there was someone on the phone.
Yeah, Mr.
Yep.
Mr. Goldwyn.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the current developers for spending as much time and effort with the community to try to get a plan where people can agree to it. I am in favor of the plan, but like everyone else, we've sort of been eating away a little bit at a time to make sure that we're getting essentially very minimal amount of retail. So while I am in favor of the plan, I would make one request that if the plan gets approved, that the developer must start his building with the retail first, so that there's no, later on, he builds the townhouses, and then for some reason, the retail doesn't get built. And I'm not trying to throw any stones at the developer. I mean, things have happened. Like over 20 years, things have happened. So I just don't want those things to happen while this development would be being finished. So that would be my request. Like I said, the developer has been very cooperative and very nice to deal with, but I would like to make sure that the retail is built first.
Okay. Point well taken, Mr. Goldwyn. Thank you, sir. All right, and for the sake of time, again, if you have questions related to SU03, please leave them in the chat or send them to me directly. We're going to jump to our last item here. We have a few more minutes. We'll definitely go over, so I hope no one feels rushed. Let me share. Okay, our last item for this evening, folks, is SU010 for Lincoln Park. This one is located just north of the Discovery Square that we talked about previously. It's on about 10 acres that are currently planned and developed with office uses between a 0.5 and a 1 FAR. So similar to the uses that you see there today. The nomination is seeking a plan option, to allow for residential use up to 15 to 20 dwelling units an acre. And I believe the nominator is looking at about 177 single-family attached or townhome residential units. Really quickly, this is a concept of the layout. As you can see to the south, Discovery Square is located just to the south. There is access along what I believe to be Highland. I don't know the name, but this is a public access road through this office park. And so the development would have access directly from there. No access directly to Centerville or onto EDS. So some of staff's preliminary considerations are, of course, compatibility, not only with the current use, but the potential future development in the area. as it's planned for non-residential uses. This is similar to the issue with the Gapi House. The area is planned for industrial uses, and so the surrounding uses can continue to develop in that way. And we're also looking at and thinking about the relationship and connectivity to the existing Discovery Square community, as well as the adjacent communities to the east. This is a very important consideration as far as providing the interparcel and connectivity, pedestrian connectivity, etc. And with that, I'm going to stop presenting and invite Mr. David Gill to the floor to talk a little bit more about the nomination. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Michael, and appreciate everybody staying up late to let us clean up here. Again, my name is David Gill. I'm a land use attorney with the law firm of Wire Gill, and here on behalf of the applicant for this particular application. And I actually appreciate hearing a lot of the previous conversation because I think it informs how we thought about our site and really how to begin the process in talking with you. Am I sharing yet, or am I 3 years into this process and still not able to do it correctly?
Not yet.
There we go. So this project is Lincoln Park, and as Mike mentioned, it's a 10-acre site just to the north of Discovery Square. And I think one of the biggest challenges that has faced suburban office in the county has been the shift from large surface parked office to really amenity-driven environments. It's one of the reasons you see all the development near the Silver Line and in Tyson's and along the Reston Corridor is there's been a flight of office tenants to these amenitized environments. And that happened even before, frankly, COVID and some of these alternative work models that we're seeing. You've got, on top of that, COVID complicating it and companies really being difficult to identify exactly what they can do to attract folks to actually come into the office. And to be frank, a suburban parked office environment really isn't successful in driving those tenants. The existing building is largely empty, and there's a second building that has been approved and could have been built by right at any point in the last 20 years and just hasn't been, unfortunately, on this site. So what we're really looking for is a natural evolution of the site to become residential, to become pedestrian friendly, to create links to link this site to the retail center across the street so that that has more people willing to walk to the Food Line, walk to the Desi Breakfast Club, support that retail there that has, frankly, not been as active maybe as it has been in the past, and then also provide some sidewalk connections so you can access Rachel Carson or Naismith and some of the schools there as well. Let me go ahead and jump into the presentation itself. Again, I'm David Gill. On the phone with me as well is Vika Engineering and Kayavnanian Homes, who would be the developer of this particular application. Kayav is experienced in the area at this. They have applications that they're moving forward with at Pender and 2 further south in Westfield. They've done very similar office conversions in the area and understand how that market works. Mike just talked about the site. We zoom in here, you can see its relationship to Discovery Square, that missing piece of the EDS sidewalk here on the north side, and then how close you are over here to the retail itself and that light at Highland, and to create some permeability through what has been a traditional office market into the rest of some of these amenities further north that maybe were as more of a wall when it was just purely office. And I will say the other 3 office owners to the north of us, we've already talked with them just briefly about it, and they are frankly pretty excited to have some more rooftops there. They think that'll make it a little more dynamic and are excited about those opportunities. I've jumped into a little bit, again, service parked, and then the fact that the existing buildings aren't fully leased. This is the by right building that could go up. It is the exact same size, 90,000 square feet, as the existing one that could be built today. So we're proposing 93 conventional townhomes and 84 stacked. And really, we're ready to file a concurrent rezoning, but we wanted to have this conversation to begin to have the, frankly, back and forth with you as a community to make sure we're addressing all the issues, because we know how you had this experience in the past, how Discovery Square evolved, and want to make sure we're making sure everything's addressed in the appropriate way. We are having a central open space of about 2/3 of an acre, and I'll go ahead and start jumping forward to that. I will also mention that our density that we were targeting is frankly just slightly less dense than what you're seeing at Discovery Square, because we're more focused on that open space and again, that sidewalks and permeability through the site. This is how it looks in situ. We have this broad 2/3 of an acre open space with a sidewalk connection over to the existing Discovery Square. We're open to whatever sidewalks might be available, and frankly, Tim, that might be a discussion for us to have as this process moves forward about what sort of permeability your community would want. Would you want a vehicular connection? That's not something we thought you want, so we have not included it here, but we're not opposed to it either if that's something you guys might want, as well as pedestrian connections. Our intent as well is for these open spaces to be open to your community. That's been our goal with this project all along, is that these are effectively public parks. This shows the full pedestrian connections, and again, how it fits into this larger picture. We've got the 3 schools over there, the McLaren Shopping Center, the newly community center, as well as the ball fields and parks. We talked about that already. Really key to this were these open spaces. On the top is how we envision the fountain and the great lawn and pavilion spaces, as well as an outdoor, basically kitchen. So it'd be a grilling area, seating area, games area, and then smaller subparks like this playground, this fitness station, and then the individual muses within the sticks of townhomes themselves. And I'll jump into some of the perspectives. Again, our intent was to mirror the form and feel of your community, and frankly, have the same quality finishes, same high-end view of how this could work, and frankly provide a better buffer than the existing office does for you right now. This is the grilled area that's a little bit more zoomed in. You can see the level of amenities we're really trying to target here. Larger view of how that space would work. You could have some community games, cornhole out there shown here. The larger park itself with a fountain feature in the middle. Again, just how these open spaces were working so that they're actually programmed and delivered early with the project. The type of playground, maybe sort of non-standard play structures here, be a little more creative in how that's approached. And then some fitness stations that we could add to that loop and make it a little more dynamic as you use that space. Again, we're preparing our rezoning. We're hopeful to have that ready, frankly, as soon as we have some back and forth here and feel confident that we're moving forward with this process. Again, compared to office, it is a significant difference in peak hour trips. It just is. I think everyone's sort of gotten used to the fact that those buildings aren't occupied, and that does make it feel a little different in terms of how it exists today. But that's from a just a straight trip standpoint, that is the truth, that it would reduce traffic significantly. We're going to absolutely increase the impervious area, provide the modern stormwater amenities, opportunities for additional BMPs and stormwater management to achieve above and beyond even what's required in the PFM here. And then opportunities to program that open space in a way that we can think be really dynamic and maybe a little more modern compared to where some of these things that were approved, frankly, 20, 25 years ago were done, and really bring some excitement to this north end of the project. With that, I'm going to say thanks and happy to jump forward and back on any of these pictures and answer any questions you guys have. Again, from our standpoint, we view this as the top of the first inning of any process, and really look forward to having this conversation with the community to figure out what's the right solution here. And Michael, with that, I'll turn it back over to you to help proctor the questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Once again, we'll open the floor for any questions or comments. And I see Tim, I'm assuming your hand is up for this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for those comments, Gil. David Gill. I guess the general sentiment that we're hearing from the neighborhood, about adding approximately 177 residential units adjacent to the neighborhood, is the strain that it would put on traffic, the children in schools, parking, and sort of the reduction of that percentage of balance that we're looking at with the retail. With just 100% pure residential, you know, going into that plan, that proposed plan, I think a lot of us are wary about that. It's just the people, right? If you come down and visit us in the neighborhood when the school buses are coming through and you see 2-3 school buses picking up at a time, the amount of people and children, the density we have in here, that's just going to kind of add to that issue. And, you know, maybe some of the parents can speak to, you know, the number of folks at Rachel Carlson and Flores and, you know, what that's doing for school age children. But the, you know, the sentiment I get in general from the neighborhood is, you know, without adding something, you know, in the way of restaurants, like we're looking at in SU 003, you know, it's just more people. So that's kind of where we're at.
That's fair, Sam, and I'd appreciate that. And I think our hope would be could sit down with you guys and as this process moves forward and have a little more candid conversation about, you know, what form that might take as that sort of level of amenity, because our focus here was on the open space side of it. But if it's more that retail for a little bit better balance, that's something we need to think about, because our focus has always been on this residential. And I think part of our reluctance to talk about that retail, because we're certainly aware of the history here, was to not be in the same situation that you guys are finding yourself, where somebody promises something and then comes back and can't deliver it. And so, you know, that's why we haven't shown it, because I don't think we're quite confident that we could, but we're happy to think about it more, I think, is given some of this feedback here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, in comparison, we're looking at to the south 50 residential units, right? And those being townhomes, to then, you know, looking at 177 residential units where, you know, it's additional stacked, you know, a little bit more verticality and more units. It's, you know, I guess that's the concern.
Understood.
Perfect. Thanks, Mr. Keating. Mr. Kumar Chandran. Okay, I think maybe he took his hand down. Forgive me again, Haranatha.
Hey, sorry, I thought I was unmuting.
Oh, sorry. Go right ahead, sir.
Good evening again. So I kind of agree with Tim. So I see that a lot of office buildings are being demolished and kind of converted into residential. So is county assuming that the COVID situation will never go away and people won't return to work in buildings? So that's kind of, because I run a company and we already started a hybrid approach where 3 days a week we go to office. Now things are changing slowly. So if you take the map of Fairfax County and then convert every commercial building into residential, then we won't have place to work. And we won't be in a situation where we can attract good companies coming into Fairfax County. There is a reason why Fairfax County and Loudoun County are #1 in the US, because I moved to Fairfax County because there were excellent offices here and that there were good paying jobs. And now we are just pumping in residences. So it's going to become like flooded with people. And the schools are already overflowing and they're having all trailers and classes in trailers. And I think the zoning was done for a reason, so that there is enough balance of residential, commercial, office space, and retail. But now I've seen, at least on the Herndon area alone, a lot of demolishing happening and converting it to apartment buildings or townhomes or just residences. I think we are going to lose out 10 years from now, then we are going to lose out significantly on necessary office spaces. And we are going to all be shortage of office spaces, and it's going to move somewhere else to North Carolina, where they are building excellent office spaces even now. So I would request the Fairfax County officials to be mindful of that the COVID situation has already started changing and companies are requiring people to come to work, because not all of the remote people, they take up 2-3 jobs and they're all moonlighting. So those things are going to change very soon. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well taken. Next I have Harinatha, and I can't see the last name.
Hi, this is Chadeva Harinathan.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I think Kumar already mentioned some of the things that I was thinking about the schools and other stuff. On the office spaces, we are moving towards the residential. Without planning the schools, which are already overcrowded, if you see in our area, every school is overcrowded. So we are not fixing those issues before we are bringing more residential areas and then making flooded into these elementary schools. Every school, if you take Rachel Carson, if you take high school, if you take elementary school, either Flores, McNair, all these things are flooded. So in my concern is first we have to make sure that they have enough capacity in every school, and last few years the ratio between a teacher and a student has been increased because of the more population. So the quality of the education to every kid is going to come down. That's a bigger concern for me.
Okay.
And I think the rest, I think Kumar and other people have already raised it, because the neighbor of Discovery Square, both sides are coming almost like 200 plus family living houses. So currently when I came here, it was not even a single bus for the Flores Elementary School. Now there are 3 buses coming just for the elementary school.
Okay.
So that's the main concern. I think I think we should fix the school things first before we build more houses.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate the comment, and I'll note briefly that all of these impacts, if any of these items make it to our work program, all of these impacts, schools included, transportation, parks, etc., would need to be considered as a part of staff's formal evaluation. But we will note that as a priority for this community. Shraman Gurung.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Sure.
So, it's always difficult to put the weight of Fairfax County's expectations on a single developer. I think it's useful maybe to think about what Fairfax County's overall goals are for certain things. So I'll give you an example in the context of these 2 developments we've just been looking at. If Fairfax County wants to grow its population without correspondingly growing the traffic, then when you think about the retail that we saw on SU3, for example, you want to have retail solutions that mean that people don't have to get in their car and drive. Okay. When we think about recreation, we want people to be able to recreate with themselves or with their children without having to get in the car and drive. Now, I've seen some really good things on these last 2 presentations about, I think, pedestrian access, I think, was mentioned to the schools. I think pedestrian access mentioned to the community recreation center. I think those things are really important to consider when we're talking about what is basically placing another couple of hundred families in this zone. Because otherwise we're not really doing Fairfax County any favors. Traffic's already terrible. Central Road is already a zoo from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. I think you know all these things. But equally, we have to accept that Fairfax County is a growing community. People need houses. People need places to start their families. It just needs to be done in a way that doesn't make the existing problems worse, and is generally sympathetic to where Fairfax County wants to be. I just want to kind of quickly double click on the retail thing. It wasn't clear to me who the kind of target consumer was for the housing that's being developed in these places. It's easy to put up, very nice looking visualizations of people pushing their buggies and walking in the streets and the restaurants and things. But we've all seen those before. And if it's not done right, you end up with a retail development that's had 3 doggy daycares and nowhere you can buy milk and bread. So, a little caution is required there, because depending on the demographic of the people you're selling these properties to, you may completely miss the mark on retail. And then all your neighbors, the people in Discovery North, Community Discovery Square, not really left with anything useful as far as retail is concerned, because those retail properties were designed for a demographic that isn't served by them. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Awesome. And again, I can't agree with that more. And your comments are certainly well taken. Christopher Zumot.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, they're talking about the office market in Fairfax County, and the vacancy rate is at 20%, and it continually goes up. And if you look at DC and the increase in vacancy and people not working, going into the office or hybrid, people are demanding less space now than what they were before, and the demand is not there. To say that they're going to Charlotte is ridiculous. This area is built around the government and the different agencies, so the demand is still going to be around, but there's plenty of office space that is already available. This building that's on the site has been at 50%, and it's going to be vacant, and was vacant prior to a few years ago, and it's below market rents. So this, I think, is a good switch. If you have more density, that attracts more retailers. If you want to have retail that you want, you need to have density, and I think this is a solid option to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And I'm not seeing any new hands. I'm going to assume that the two hands that are up now were there previously. Were there any comments or questions in chat, Deanna or Leah?
No, I put in a couple responses, but there was one question about the density compared to Discovery Square, and I think we'd have to get back to you, Jeff, on that one. One's an FAR and one's dwelling units per acre, just to do that calculation.
Leanna, we did the math on trying to compare apples to apples. So, Jeff, on that question, if you look at everything west of the Spine Road, sort of the townhome area, to our townhome area, it's roughly 21 to the acre for the Discovery Square townhome portion, and we're proposing 17 to the acre with this particular application.
And the Discovery Square acreage includes space that was dedicated for the community center.
Correct, and for the park as well.
And for the park.
So I was just trying to compare this space to that.
Okay. And I think, nope, there aren't any additional questions there.
Okay. Mr. Burton, hi, this
yes,
is
sir.
Tim Keating again. I know we've got quite a few residents that are just on the phone portion, so maybe we could open it up to anybody that wanted to speak. On the phone.
By all means, if I don't see your hand, or if you're joining from the phone, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment you'd like to add. And we'll give folks a few moments to do that. I know it can be tricky. I see a hand from Mira. Mira, if you would like to speak, you're welcome to do so.
Hi, this is Mira. So my question is, are most of the residential units going to be single car garage units? If that is going to be the case, I would really ask to allocate more parking spaces and more street parking, more public parking spaces. Don't just waste land, and because the people will not be able to enjoy their living. They won't be able to park their cars. And so, yeah, that was just my only request. Thank you.
Vera, great question. We have 2 spaces in each garage, plus we oriented it so all of our visitor parking is head in, basically using sort of the existing parking layout on the north side, so that if there are visitor parking, they're not going through the Discovery Square community at all. Instead, they're parking away from your community to use that for the visitor parking, so there's no spillover.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
There's another chat question, if you know who the potential builder of the homes would be.
Kayavnanian Homes is the applicant here. They, like I said, they are active over at Pender Oaks, behind the Pender Shopping Center, off Route 50, if you're familiar with that, as well as the boulevards at Westfield, which is a nearby project. And to be honest, they also were the developers of the condo buildings in Discovery Square itself. The builders of the Discovery Square itself.
Perfect. Any other questions before we transition and close? All right. Again, I want to first just thank everyone. I know a number of folks have dropped off the call. David, first, let me thank you as well for answering the questions. And we'll be sure to forward any comments that are pertinent to you and the other nominators. Thank you for coming out to the meeting. If you want to follow up with information regarding this meeting, the information can be found online. This meeting recording will be posted online as well. I also encourage everyone to stay tuned for the Planning Commission workshops. Again, we are eyeing late February, early March for those to begin. There will be a series of meetings, I believe at least 3 or 4. So get ready for that. And if you continue to have comments or questions, or if you think of something after this call, we have a SSPA email box. You can send that to DPD, David Parcel David, SSPA at fairfaxcounty.gov. That's DPD, SSPA at fairfaxcounty.gov. Or you can send me an email. Again, my name is Michael Burton, B-U-R-T-O-N. Michael with AEL at fairfaxcounty.gov, and we'll work to get the information back to you as soon as possible, or any information that you need.
Michael?
Yes, sir.
How will we be notified about the late February, early March meetings? Will there be emails sent out? I mean, I got a pamphlet in the mail, in the regular mail. How will that work?
Yes, sir. We will likely send out, and Leanna, you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if a mailing formally will go out to all of the same addresses for each of the nominations, but we will definitely work through every possible channel we have for communication, and that includes the supervisor's newsletter. That includes, I think we maybe put a posting on Nextdoor, our webpage, Facebook, and if I've missed any, Leanna, help me out.
No, that's right. I
Okay.
think that the flyers that went out for these meetings also would have a link that you can use when we confirm which nominations go to which day.
Yes.
And we'll certainly work with the supervisor's office for her newsletter, as you mentioned, and other social media outlets.
Okay, and Mike, I just wanted to follow up on one conversation that we had like at lunchtime today.
Yes, sir.
The link to get to this, and I finally got it through another method, but the link to get to this site was incorrect on your website, on the calendar website, and was almost impossible to find. The person who answered the phone was trying to be extremely cooperative, don't get me wrong, but it was almost impossible to get here. And I got on the video portion of it in the last 10 minutes only, really.
Okay. All right. Your point is well taken, Mr. Goldwyn. I will talk with the IT staff to see if we can't make the location of those meeting links, particularly for the Planning Commission and those dates, more visible, so that when people are going to the website, you'll see it right away, and you won't have to kind of hunt through different menus.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. All right. If there are no other concerns or questions, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. We look forward to your continued participation as we move on to the next phase of our study. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.